Hello and welcome to the 3 Inning Fan Show. My guest today is Jared Diamond. He's a writer about the business of sports for the Wall Street Journal. It's must-read journalism for people like me who are interested not only in what I see on the field, but also on the transactional side of the game. Jared is also the author of Swing Kings, the inside story of baseball's home run revolution. Jared, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm so glad to be here. I love your studio.
This is great. He came all the way to be in studio here, and we are feeling really honored about it because Jared had a piece in the Wall Street Journal this week that totally piqued my interest, and I immediately emailed him and asked him to be on the show to talk about it. Jared, you wrote a piece about the most envied stadium development in MLB. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So you may know the All-Star game just happened earlier this week as we're recording in Atlanta. And the Braves have not had a very good season, surprisingly so. We all thought they were going to be a World Series contender. They have not been. But despite that, in the eyes of Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball, and all of the owners and sort of the power players of the industry, the Braves are the most envied team in the sport. Essentially the model that every team in baseball wants to follow. And it's not because of their performance on the field, not this year. It's because of what they're doing off the field and all of the loads and loads of money they are bringing in because of the battery, the real estate.
The battery.
The battery. You'll be hearing that name a lot today. For those who don't know, the battery is essentially a mixed-use development around their stadium. It has apartments, it has hotels, and a lot of restaurants, a lot of shops, a lot of sort of entertainment offerings right outside the ballpark. You basically can't get in and out of the ballpark without passing through it. And the Braves own all of it. They developed this, essentially an outdoor mall, if we're being honest, with apartments, hotels, and offices, lots of office space as well. Developed this in concert with the stadium. It was all built, designed, conceived as one project. And in many ways, it's the biggest development in the sports business, probably of this generation, at least of stadium design, because every team in sports now is saying, hey, I want that. How could I get myself one of those?
It's weird because while you were talking about that, I immediately had this flashback to going to Yankee Stadium or Shea Stadium when I was a kid. And it was basically, and it's maybe not that different now, but it was really stark in those days. It was a stadium in the middle of like an entire pasture land of concrete as far as the eye could see. So the battery is a little different, is what you're telling me.
Quite a bit different. So stadium design has kind of gone in phases. So if you go back to the 60s, 70s, even into the 80s, stadiums were all what you just said. A big circle surrounded by concrete. Then in the 90s, Camden Yards, Baltimore, starts a new sort of paradigm, downtown. We're going back downtown and we're going to build our stadiums in neighborhoods. And we saw this huge rush. Every team wanted to go downtown. Every baseball team built a downtown stadium in the 90s or 2000s. That's great because there's a lot to do around those stadiums, right? The Inner Harbor, Lodi in Denver, downtown Cleveland. Like there's plenty to do. Here's the problem for the teams. They don't own any of that, right? So when fans would go to Camden Yards and they would go to a bar before or after the game, they are supporting the local economy. That's good for the city. Doesn't help the team very much, right? What the Braves and others have come to realize is, hey, that's revenue we could be making if we become essentially a real estate company and develop our own stuff around our stadium instead of having these other businesses kind of come in and take in that money for themselves, right? So we started seeing other examples, right? We saw Patriot Place outside of Gillette Stadium or Ballpark Village in St. Louis or Titletown in Green Bay. They were sort of added later on after the stadium was built, saying, hey, maybe we could develop the land around it. What the Braves did that was so revolutionary and why it sort of perfected this concept is they built it together and it's huge, right? They're not saying, hey, how can we kind of buy up land around our stadium and try to retroactively fit it in, kind of like what the Cubs have done, around Wrigley Field, where they're trying to buy as much as they can around Wrigley Field. The Braves said, no, we're just going to go get a giant plot of land in the suburbs, not downtown. Pretty hard to find that much land downtown to do something like this. And built this enormous development. It's like 60 acres. They have, I think, almost 2.5 million square feet of space, various space. So it's huge, and they own every bit of it. So all of that money that comes in is theirs. And essentially what they did is they built a neighborhood, right? They built a place where if everything went well, which it has, people are going year round, not just the 81 baseball games. That's the problem with stadiums, right? They're only used in baseball 81 times a year. But what if you could build something that would be an attraction the other 365 minus 81 days a year to bring people in and keep the cash register flowing, ringing when it's not baseball season, the team's on the road. And that's really what's happened here.
And are the people doing that?
They now run at the Battery. I think last year they had somewhere around 280 events. So 81 of them were baseball games. I don't know, they had a playoff game or two. I don't remember. But about 200 of those events were not baseball games, right?
Wow.
There's a music venue there, the Coca-Cola Roxy, which is like a 4,000 capacity music venue. And they have all these other sort of event spaces. And again, giant hotels that have giant convention centers, plus businesses. 5 companies now have moved corporate headquarters to the Battery.
So people go to work at the baseball stadium.
Essentially, yeah. Papa John's moved their headquarters from Louisville there. Gas South, Truist is opening a big regional headquarters there. Shake Shack's opening up a giant office space there later this year. I think actually right around now, like right after the All-Star game, they were planning on opening it. These are giant companies bringing people to the Battery. That's rent the Braves are collecting. And keep in mind, that is it's not just money, it's a certain kind of money, which is money the Braves get to keep. Remember how sports work, baseball works? You have to share your revenue that you make from baseball, right? That's how it works. The rich teams funnel down money to the poor teams. So every team, poor, less rich, I suppose.
That are only owned by a billion.
Yes, exactly.
Lone $1 billion
yes,
billionaire.
Exactly. So the Braves, every team pools 48% of their baseball revenue. Baseball revenue is things like ticket sales, concessions, parking, local
All
media
the local,
deals.
yeah.
Basically everything that you would expect to make from baseball. You pool that 48% and it gets split among the teams. That means they only get to keep 52% of it for themselves. The Battery, the real estate venture, not baseball revenue, not subject to any of that. So every dollar that comes in is just theirs to keep. And look, it's been a huge boon for the team. When the Braves moved, the year the Braves were at Turner Field, 2016, they had about, I don't have it directly in front of me, about $260 million in revenue total. Fast forward about a decade, right now it's 2025. Last year, 2024, their revenues were about $660 million.
Wow.
And their payroll has risen commensurately with it. The team's payroll was 23rd, 24th in baseball their last years at Turner Field. They've been in the top 10 each of the last 3 years. So they are reinvesting this Battery money, at least some of it, back into the team.
Well, that is certainly nice to hear. And we're here with Jared Diamond of the Wall Street Journal. So you should be reading him. You should be following him on X at Jared Diamond. So I have a big following that are Mets fans, and you probably do too, Jared. So we're not particularly fond of saying nice things about the Braves, but this isn't personal. It's business, right? And so this setup is actually worthy of being copying, it sounds like.
And the Mets are one of the teams essentially trying to, right? We all know that Steve Cohen is trying very hard to build a development in what is now the chop shops that surround Citi Field. If he has his druthers, he's going to build a casino. We know he's been, out there lobbying and, whining and dining politicians to try to get that casino. But whether he gets the casino or not, there's no question he wants to build around Citi Field and this new stadium that's going in, the soccer stadium that's near Citi Field. So they're doing this, right? They're finding a way to do it. given the parameters they have, right? And like the ideal world, you build a new stadium, you have this sort of as part of it. But not every team's going to be able to do that. If you've built a stadium in the last 15 years, you're not thinking about a new one yet. But we all know there's plenty of room to develop around Citi Field. I mean, it's been a known, it's like sort of a joke around the Mets for their whole history. Like, what is around Shea Stadium? What's around Citi Field? Certainly character, but not necessarily good for the Mets. And there's no question he is going to change that one way or the other. So he's just one of the many teams trying to copy it. The people I talked to for my story, talked to economists, talked to people who helped design the Battery, and the one sort of common point that kept being made to me is there will not be a stadium built in America for the foreseeable future that this is not part of. No one is going to just build a stadium surrounded by parking lots again. They're just leaving too much money on the table. We've now seen the proof of concept. Now, it doesn't mean it'll work everywhere. Like, I don't want to, the Braves do deserve credit for making this work. It wasn't a guarantee it was going to work. They picked the right site. They developed it in a way that was appealing to people. So I don't know if every one of these will necessarily pop the way this one has, but they've certainly set a model to follow.
So it kind of reminds me of when the Orioles moved into Camden Park, and that was a revolutionary ballpark in the way that it was kind of retro, but it changed the way stadiums were. We went kind of from stadiums to ballparks, and now you're telling us that the Battery is going to be the harbinger of this new revolution.
It makes sense. These things kind of go in 30-year cycles. Camden Yards opened in the early 90s. 30 years have now passed. 30 years, it had been 30 years before Camden Yards was built, and everyone was building their cookie-cutter, multi-purpose stadiums in the 60s and 70s. So we kind of have gone in these 30-year cycles of ballpark design, and now the Braves are starting a new one. The Camden Yards was absolutely revolutionary. And by the way, it holds up. And the Orioles, too, are trying to figure out, could we develop the areas in the parking lots around the stadiums? Like, they're working on their own version of this. But yeah, we've seen these 30-year cycles. Not surprising, a lot of these teams initially signed 30-year leases, which is sort of why we start seeing this every 30 years, kind of something new. And this is the new. And
well, let's go back to, because you said the word lease, and now I want to go back to Steve Cohen for a minute, because it's my understanding that Citi Field is actually on land leased from New York City, right? So Cohen doesn't own that land. Does he own the land around it?
No, I mean, he's trying to acquire as much of it as he can, right? Citi Field sits on, as you mentioned, correct, but there's all the auto body shops that sort of line it. Those are privately owned. Look, Steve Cohen has a lot of money. You may have heard. He has quite a bit of money. He has like more money than like most of the other owners combined by himself, essentially. Like, if he wants it, he could probably figure out a way to make it happen. The issue is more like dealing with the city for like zoning or whatever else. It won't. At the end of the day, he's probably going to get what he wants. I suspect he'll get that casino. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Too soon to say, but he has a way of getting what he wants. He wanted Juan Soto. We got him.
Money talks, right?
Exactly. With him, it certainly does.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see what he does with it. And one thing I'd like him to see, I'd like to see him do, is make access to Citi Field a little better. I wonder if that's going to be part of the plan. I mean, speaking as someone from Connecticut, for the Yankee games, I can take the Yankee Clipper to Yankee Stadium, and it makes it easier to get there. But there's not really an easy way to get to Citi Field, and I'm wondering if there could be like a nice little ferry going from Connecticut.
Getting to Citi Field's rough if you live where we live. Those Long Island people have it easier, though, to get to Citi Field. That's why there's more Mets fans out there, more Yankee fans up here.
Well, that's true. That's true. If you grow up where I grew up, down here in the southwest corner of Connecticut, you're Yankees or Mets. And if you go just a little bit past New Haven, it turns Red Sox.
I know. It's crazy. Connecticut's a weird place.
Yeah.
The Red Sox-Yankee dividing line.
So besides the Mets, what other teams might be interested in copying this Battery model?
Well, we know the Royals have been talking about building a new stadium, that this would be a part of. The Rays, we know, have no choice but to build a new stadium, and will, hopefully, maybe one day. This has been something that this has been part of every sort of conceived plan they've had for a new stadium. I think any team that's looking to build, who's going to be trying to build one sort of again, retrofit one in? The Cubs have been doing it for years. We know they've been buying up land. The same with the Red Sox. How much land can we sort of buy? If there is land to be bought around your stadium, these owners are trying to buy it. Everyone wants to be a real estate developer now. Look, I think the criticism of this that you've heard is, well, these aren't even sports teams anymore. They're just real estate companies. They're just real estate companies, and the sports team is sort of the afterthought. And I understand that sort of concern. To an extent, it's true. It does seem like increasingly these franchises do care more about their real estate and even almost view buying the team, if you're a prospective owner, as a real estate play over anything else. But I do think it's important to sort of keep in mind that the Battery only works because there's a stadium there. If the Braves were not there, the Battery would basically just be a mall. A nice mall with offices and apartments. But you need that anchor. And that's like the word you hear used a lot. Like it's a stadium anchored development. So I do think it is critical. And look, the Braves have been very good, not this year, but they've been very good since moving to Truist Park. They won a World Series in Truist Park back in 2021. The question will become what happens if the Braves are just consistently bad, right? Like, does the Battery still work if the team stops drawing fans? Now, they hope the answer is yes, but what it does show you, the fact the Braves have been so good, the Battery's been successful, I don't think you could sort of extricate those 2 points. So it does sort of indicate that the team, the sports part of this is critical and cannot be an afterthought. And I do think there's going to be some owners that go into this thinking that the team is an afterthought and the real estate's really where it's at. And they're going to find out it's not, because at the end of the day, without a good team, without a team that people want to go see, you just kind of have empty restaurants and bars.
So did you go? Have you been to the Battery?
I was there for All-Star.
You were?
Just a couple, as we're recording this, just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And like the place with hopping. It's made for a big event like that, right? People coming from all over. Look, like I said, you can't not walk through it. Like you basically have to when you walk out of Truist Park, especially if you walk out for some particular gates. There's some gates that are on the other side, but certain gates, you walk out and you're just in it. Like you are steps away from this dizzying array of like bars and restaurants and lights and beckoning you here and there. When you're in the stadium, you're sitting behind the plate, all you see is the Omni Hotel and the Comcast building, basically sort of like tempting you to like come check out what's back there after the game. And there's a lot there. It's sort of a mix of, there's national chain type places. There's a lot of sort of offshoots or secondary locations of, restaurants that are elsewhere in Atlanta that opened up a new location in the Battery. You could see how it'd be fun, right? Especially you win after a win, you go out and celebrate before the game. Look, everyone's always like, what do we do before the game? Let's go to dinner. Let's do that. All right, well, the Braves are like, yeah, you're going to do that and you're going to do it here.
And you
on
can
our campus.
Park once and do all those things.
Right. It's just a one-stop shop.
So you said in your piece that one of the bars even had a mechanical bull, and I was kind of curious as to whether or not you had tried it.
Did not do the mechanical bull.
Wow.
The Braves are very proud of that mechanical bull. They talk about it constantly, and I don't quite know why it's so important to them, but they really want people to know that in addition to the, 2.5 million square feet of this and that, they have one mechanical bull. That's a big attraction.
One mechanical bull, and clearly Jared did not drink enough at the All-Star break.
I was working, busy. Had to be professional.
He ought to be ashamed of himself. So, you mentioned this aspect of revenue, and I just want to be clear for our listeners at 3 Inning Fan, the show, is that this revenue aspect is extremely important because the teams share all the money from the national broadcasts, and on their local broadcasts and their local concessions, they have to share 48% of it. But what Jared is telling us is that the Battery is a money-making machine and the Braves get to keep it all themselves.
Exactly, because anything that's not considered baseball revenue under the current collective bargaining agreement is not subject to any revenue sharing plan. This is essentially just a separate business. Like in the eyes of Major League Baseball, the Battery is not connected to the Braves. Like, it's owned by the company that owns the Braves. And the Braves are an interesting franchise in general because they're a public company, which for a reporter is great because it's the one team where you really get to see where the money's going, how much they're making. No, every other team treats their books like, like the nuclear codes, but the Braves don't have that luxury, so we get to see it. But in the eyes of baseball, the Battery is it's not part of the Braves. It's sort of a separate business venture that they have. So it's their money. So even though if you look at Braves Holdings, Atlanta Braves Holdings, like the official name of the public company, the Battery is a very small chunk of the overall $660 million or whatever they made last year. Only I think less than $100 million of that came from the Battery. But it's almost like this bonus, right? It's just this extra revenue they get to keep that other teams don't have. I mean, it does give them a huge advantage. So they are among the highest revenue teams in baseball because of it, right? And again, because they don't have to share it, each one of those dollars is basically two because they get to keep it and don't have to split half of it.
Now, that leads me to my next question, which is, as you know, baseball and the players are going to be renegotiating the collective bargaining agreement, hopefully.
So we hope.
Next year. Will the players' union try to stake a claim to any of these this revenue that comes from places like the Battery?
It's a really interesting question. I think they'll have a very difficult time trying to bargain that in. These teams are going to say, well, this has nothing to do with baseball. Why? Hey, we have offices, we have hotels. Well, what does that have to do with the team? That has nothing to do with baseball. The fact that, Papa John's is paying us rent to rent out this building. We developed this. There's nothing to do with you. That's what they'll say. Will it come up in the negotiation? Maybe. Who knows? Enjoy baseball the next year and a half because at the end of the 2016th and things are going to get real dicey.
I am very afraid.
You should be. Everyone is. The fact that we're talking about this now and the whole industry is talking about this now tells you that it's going to be rough, right? Like the fact that we're already gearing up, everyone sort of knows what's coming. It's this thing looming, but getting ever closer. Look, baseball as a sport, at least the owners believe that significant economic reform is necessary, right? And the only way to get significant economic reform is pain, essentially, right? The Baseball Players Union is strong. We already know what happened in 1994, the last time the owner said we really want a salary cap. We know what happened. There was no World Series in 94, and it destroyed baseball for years. And if not for McGuire and Sosa in 98, who knows what would have happened, right? Fast forward to now, in some ways, those calls for a salary cap are stronger, right? In part because of guys like Steve Cohen, because of the Dodgers, right? Because of the collapse of the television economy that has essentially fueled baseball for decades. We now have a sport where the Dodgers, when you factor in their luxury tax payments, are going to spend about $500 million on their roster. And the Miami Marlins have a payroll of about $68 million. And increasingly, people are going, wait a second, how is that a thing? How could you realistically have a sport with that kind of disparity between the highest spending teams and the lowest spending teams? So that's all going to come to a head. And look, we'll be talking about this plenty. I try not to think about it because I just know it's going to be the only thing in my life for a long time when we get there. But yeah, it's going to be tough.
Jared doesn't realize this, but I've actually set up a little cot in the corner of the studio where he can sleep next year.
Just do all my reporting. I'll be just texting people all day and night.
And just appear on my show every day to talk about the collective bargaining agreement. So baseball is really kind of having a bit of a heyday right now. They're enjoying the fruits of some positive changes to the game. Not that I love every one of them, but I think overall they've been good. And I asked this question to my last guest, Dan Roberts, who's great on Front Office Sports. I'm going to ask you the same thing because I don't really know what my answer is. But the question is, if there is a work stoppage next year, who has more to lose, the owners or the players?
At the end of the day here, when you think about a work stoppage in baseball, any real work stoppage in any industry, I guess, the owners, if they really want, will eventually win any labor fight because they could just wait longer. They just have more money, right? They just have more money. The players make a lot of money, but they're not Steve Cohen. They're not David Rubenstein. They're not Mark Walter. They could wait out the players for anything if they're willing to wait long enough. The question, though, is at what point is it not worth it to wait them out, right? Because bringing down the sport, 94 showed this, does significant damage to the whole industry, right? So if you lose a season, you might get giant financial gains for the owners. But will whatever you lose in like the lack of fan support counteract whatever sort of gains you make? And then you're spending the next 10 years just trying to get the fan interest back to where it is now, right? So that's sort of the calculation here. So like everyone has a lot to lose. The players' careers are a lot shorter. They only have the average career is like 4 years, even less nowadays, I think. To lose a full year of your career, I mean, it's devastating. And these are players, by the way, a generation of players, many of whom, if they were in the minors, did lose a full year of their career. If they were in the majors, lost 2/3 of a season.
Because of COVID.
Because of COVID in 2020. So everyone already sort of like lost all or most of a year. So look, there's a lot to lose for everyone. At the end of the day, you want to believe that everybody's able to sort of, despite their differences, recognize that they kind of need each other, right? Like, there is no game without the players, right? We know what happened when the owners in 95 tried to bring in replacement players.
Right.
It didn't work out so well. Like, you need the players. These guys are the best players in the world. You cannot just replace them. You cannot replace Shohei Ohtani or Aaron Judge or whoever else. But look, the players need somewhere to play, right? Like, Major League Baseball as an entity is critical. You hope at some point they get together and go, hey, we're all making too much money to sort of blow it all over this fight. I'm not saying that baseball doesn't have problems. I do think the sort of economic system of baseball is sort of being stretched to its limits. Like, it isn't good that the Dodgers spend so much and the Marlins spend so little. I understand why it happens. The Dodgers make so much more money than the Marlins. The Dodgers probably afford to raise their payroll another $100 million with how much money they're making, right? The Marlins are not making that much money. So I understand how, like, you want a sport where every fan feels like they have a chance, right? Like, you look at the Pirates, who've been terrible for a decade. They haven't won a World Series in like 40 years or whatever it's been, even longer, I think.
79.
Yeah, they have Paul Skeens. You may have heard of him. Most exciting young pitcher baseball's had in like decades, right? In generations, one of a kind of guy. And if you're a Pirates fan, you already know, at least in this current system, that he will not be a Pirate soon. In fact, you're kind of just counting down to the Pirates look to trade him. Because under the current system, will never stay. And you know that, right? I had someone in baseball earlier this year. I talk about, this is like the only thing I think about is this issue. I feel like every story I write kind of circles back to this topic of economic disparity. Someone high up in baseball says to me, one thing we say in the think about in the office is like, if you're a Pirates fan, it's like a realistic scenario that if less things change, nobody goes into the Hall of Fame wearing a Pirates hat ever again. Now, maybe that's an exaggeration, but I understand the point because no one who comes up with the Pirates or the Marlins or whatever under the current system will stay.
And that's sad.
Right? So I understand the need for reform. I do think some reform is necessary. The question is there a compromise? Is there a way to improve the competitive landscape, to try to sort of even the playing field a little without the nuclear option, which is salary cap or nothing, because you know what pushing for a salary cap means. It means you're missing a full year minimum.
Yes.
We know that going into it. So are there other things we could do? Can we change revenue sharing? Can we change our media situations that that we're sharing more revenue? Can the big teams essentially recognize that for the good of the industry, they might have to take less, so the less wealthy teams take more? Remember, the TV business collapsing, that's real. And it was not something that anyone could have known was coming 20 years ago. Like, the world has changed. There's 6 teams now that don't have their games on a regional sports network because there is no RSN in their market anymore, right? Like, that's only going to intensify. So baseball does need to make changes. You just hope they also could do it without bringing down a year, because that would just be devastating. It's gonna be rough.
It's going to be rough, and I shudder at the thought of having to actually get a life in 2027 if there's no baseball season.
I hope I still have a job.
Right, you might need that cot.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
You'll have to live on it. But I also might add that it would be good, and I know that I think you probably agree with this, but have a system where the owners of the Pirates, the Bob Nuttings, and the owners of the Marlins and those teams also spend a little more, maybe spend a little more of the revenue sharing that they do get on players' salaries.
There's no question that there are small market teams that are milking the system, right? There are teams, we don't need to name them, but you may have named a couple of them, where other teams are furious at them for saying, like, we were already supporting you and you're not sort of carrying your end of the bargain, right? Like, the Pirates never spend, ever. The Marlins essentially never spend. Like, there are some teams that absolutely could be spending more, and I would argue should be spending more. I think the issue that you're getting, let's say, I'm just making this up, let's say you're small market team X, and after your revenue sharing check and everything else, you're bringing in a profit of $30 million. That would actually make them one of the more profitable teams. Most teams sort of are in that general sort of break-even point in year-to-year cash flow. Obviously, franchise valuations keep going up, so the owners are making money that way. But sort of year in, year out, most teams are kind of in that they might make $10 million, they might lose $10 million. But let's say you're making $30 million and your payroll is $100, okay? And let's say that team spends every penny of their profit on payroll. So now you raise your payroll from 100 to 130. Your payroll's still $200 million less than the Dodgers, $250 million less than the Dodgers. So I don't agree with it, but I get an owner going, what's the point? Like, why? Like, I cannot compete. Now I would argue you do it because you owe it to your fan base, because a baseball team is not a regular business. You sort of own a piece of civic pride, and you have some social obligations that go with that. Also, from a competitive standpoint, now there's 3 wildcard teams. All you got to do is get into the dance, and you got a shot. We saw what happened with Arizona a couple of years ago. Like, yes, usually the big teams prevail at the end, but once you get in there, you never know, right? Like, the Rays have won 2 pennants. The Marlins have won 2 World Series. It can be done. So I would argue you kind of owe it to your fans to try. That said, even these teams spending every cent of their profit on payroll doesn't compare to because the Dodgers are bringing in $1 billion of revenue. I mean, maybe even more, between their ridiculous TV deal that no team will ever get again, because they signed it at a much different time of television, and it lasts for another 15 years or whatever. All the money they're not making from Japan because of Shohei Ohtani, and the fact they just make so much money. Other teams just simply cannot compete with that. So I think there's sort of 2 things. Yes, small market teams, some of them are not holding up their end of the bargain. And also, yes, that gap is still enormous and probably bigger than it should be.
Well, you got to tip your cap to the Dodgers. I have to say, I don't do it with a smile on my face, but I do it. They did it right.
The Dodgers have built an incredible business. Ever since Guggenheim and Mark Walter came in there, they have turned the Dodgers into the premier organization in baseball. There's no other way of putting it. Like, that's what they are. One reason why they have so many good players, it's because they spend a lot, but it's also because players all want to go there. Every free agent wants to go there because they've built up this incredible organization that is very attractive to star players, and helps to have Shohei Ohtani.
Definitely, and especially when you're recruiting potential young Japanese stars.
Oh, well, they own Japan. I mean, forget it. Every young Japanese player given the chance to sign with the Dodgers, and given what Ohtani's done, given what Yamamoto is doing now, he's emerged this year as one of the best pitchers in the National League. We all hope Roki Sasaki turned out to be just as successful. Hopefully he gets back from that shoulder issue this season. The Dodgers are sort of a one-of-a-kind organization. Like, they have built-in advantages that no sort of labor contract will be able to deal with, right? They play in a very desirable market in Los Angeles. They're able to draw a lot of fans because they play in such a big area, right? They just have more fans to pull from than Milwaukee, right? Like, there's always going to be advantages to being a big market. Even sports that have salary caps, there are certain advantages that come with being in LA. The Lakers are always good. Not like there's a salary cap, but yet the Lakers are usually good, right? Like the Celtics are usually good, right? So there's always going to be advantages to being a big market, and that's fine. No one is saying that baseball should be perfectly even, where every team is equal all the time. No one's saying that. We're just saying that, money should not be as big of a driver of success as it is. And we all know it is, right? The players union, who do great work, will always point out, look at the Rays, look at the Brewers. The Rays and Brewers are amazing organizations. They win with little, and they deserve a lot of credit for it. But they're exceptions.
Yes.
They're outliers who, again, deserve credit. But let's not pretend that's the norm. At the end of the day, payroll and winning percentage are directly correlated. It's been proven over years and years that if you take buckets, top 5 payrolls, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, go down to 30, winning percentage literally just goes on a straight line down. Winning percentage and payroll are correlated. So yes, the Brewers and the Rays are outliers. And yes, the Angels are an outlier the other way, where they do have money and they still lose. There's always going to be exceptions, but that's unusual. At the end of the day, money in baseball absolutely does matter, and it probably matters a little too much. And that's the problem.
Ladies and gentlemen, you might think that Jared Diamond of the Wall Street Journal is only about the x-axis and the y-axis, but wait, there's more. Because we are about to find out what Jared Diamond likes to eat while he's watching the ball game. Jared Diamond, we close every show here at 3 Inning Fan with the most important topic, which is food. And we like to discuss what our favorite food to eat while watching the ball game is. Go.
It really depends what ballpark I'm at. If this is ballpark food,
It could be at
I've
the
had
ballpark,
concessions
or it
at
could be
every-
home. It could be on your couch at home.
when I'm watching baseball, I'm too locked into eating at home. But I have tried
Serious guy.
I have had, it's my job.
Maybe
know?
he is only about the x-axis and the y-axis.
I drink tea. I have green tea a lot every night.
That's very civilized.
It's my calming drink when I'm working. It's my job, very important. But I
Right,
have had
yeah.
concessions in every single ballpark in the major leagues.
Is that right?
I've been covering baseball since 2013. So yes, I've spent a lot of time at baseball stadiums in the last
If this
whatever
man
number of
dies
years.
tomorrow, his life is complete.
I have spent a lot of time at baseball stadiums, more than I probably should even think about. Honestly, I might just get depressed if I think how many hours I've spent in baseball press boxes. So I have tried every concession, not every concession. I have tried some concession at every single stadium. So some highlights. Citi Field, I would say, probably is still among the best concessions in all of baseball, among them. And that's always been the case.
Personal favorite at Citi Field?
They don't have it anymore, so I don't know if I should say it.
Well, what
They
is
used to have Mamas of Corona, but they got rid of that a couple years ago.
What did they make?
It was like an Italian sandwich place
Okay.
based off a fairly well-known deli elsewhere in Queens.
All right.
Got rid of that. But getting out of New York, San Francisco is a huge, incredible concession place. Crazy Crab Sandwich.
Really? I
Crazy
love
Crab
crab.
Sandwich is so good.
Huh.
In San Francisco. So that's a good one. Sushi in Seattle, or teriyaki.
Really? Because
In
I'm a little
Seattle.
nervous about sushi at a
Not
ballpark.
in Seattle.
Okay.
The only place it's really good.
Okay.
Seattle, they know
Yeah.
their way around. And teriyaki, they have great teriyaki they do. And Tony Luke's cheesesteaks in Philadelphia. I hate to give the Phillies any credit.
Okay.
It is
yeah.
pretty good. Am I forgetting anything? Those are some good ones.
Whole
Those are a few.
cheesesteak. Can you finish a whole cheesesteak, or you got to share it with?
Depends how
a
long the
friend?
game is. Games are shorter now than when I first started covering
Right.
baseball. You know, the pitch clock is still a pretty new innovation for me. I don't have these like 3.5-hour games anymore.
Oh, it's amazing.
But yeah, where has this been all my life?
Yeah. Well,
Great
that's
innovation.
interesting concept to measure the length of a baseball game by how much
Right,
cheesesteak
it's how
you
much
could eat.
right, how much food I ate during the game. Trust me, I covered the 18-inning World Series game back in 2018. That was a memorable night into
Wow.
morning.
Wow. Oh, you've seen some cool stuff. You've been a great guest today.
Thank you very much. This was a lot of fun.
Are you going to come back to my show?
Hopefully not during the lockout. Hopefully we don't have to worry about a lockout. I'm
Okay.
still crossing my fingers.
All right. There you have it.
Anytime.
We're going to have faith here at 3 Inning Fan, the podcast. My guest has been Jared Diamond. You should be subscribing to the Wall Street Journal to read him. Like, he is the guy you want to be reading, and you should be following him on X at Jared Diamond. Jared, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much. This is great.
We'll see everybody next time.